We continue with a speech from Chris Marsden from the Socialist Equality Party. WSWS.com has been a fantastic source reporting accurately on the Julian Assange case. They're in the struggle of anti-censorship as well, because they've experienced that themselves. So, Chris, would you like to come and say a few words, please?
John Skipton said this month of the British authorities that they will murder Julian one way or the other. Now, no father should ever have to utter such a sentence, but he did so after visiting Julian in this prison, explaining that he has lost 15 kilos in weight and is in the prison hospital 22 hours a day in solitary confinement. Of course, we all know that Julian should never have been incarcerated in this hellhole, but even so, he should have been released. Instead, he was remanded until his extradition in February by a judge citing his history of absconding. Shame. Now, this is a rotten lie. Julian Assange is the most high-profile political prisoner in the world today. There's as much chance of him absconding as there would be the Pope. His continued imprisonment is at the very least vindictive, but Julian's father is correct. It represents a grave danger to his life, an imminent threat. Why else would anyone choose to deny him access to sunlight, air, freedom of movement, exercise, which he could be given in any minimum security facility in the country? Julian is subject to class justice. Justice for the ruling class and by the political and legal servants of the ruling class. Their sole aim is to silence him at all costs, and no crime is too dirty for them to commit. Every day brings fresh evidence of state criminality directed against Julian. A case he brought in Spain's High Court has led to an investigation of David Morales, the director of UC Global, and his company, who was supposed to be contracted to protect the American embassy in London, but were in fact dedicated to spying on Julian Assange. Morales is a military figure hired by the former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa and maintained in his position by Lenin Moreno, indicating collusion with the US over years, long before Julian was expelled from the embassy in April. This was under direct orders from Donald Trump, but it was carried out with the full and active support of the Democrats. The stench of corruption and hypocrisy in daily political life is becoming unbearable. This Thursday, the US Senate Intelligence Committee released the complaint by an unnamed CIA agent assigned to the White House, which stated that Trump, quote, is using the power of his office to solicit interference from a foreign country in the 2020 US election. Trump had sought to pressurize Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to initiate an investigation into Hunter Biden, the son of the former Democrat Vice President Joe Biden, over his receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars for sitting on the board of a Ukrainian energy firm. In response, Trump, in typical gangster style, denounced the whistleblower as a traitor who was close to being a spy. He said, "You know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart, with spies and treason, right? We used to handle it a little differently than we do now." The Democrats, of course, were outraged. A whistleblower revealing high crimes and misdemeanors was being openly threatened with violence, even death, because Trump had cited the crime of espionage. The noble Democratic chairman of the House Intelligence, Foreign Affairs and Oversight Committees issued a joint statement charging Trump with witness intimidation and warning, quote, threats of violence from the leader of our country have a chilling effect on the entire whistleblower process, with grave consequences for our democracy and national security. The House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff added that all Americans must denounce such witness intimidation. Now, where is the denunciation of the charging of Julian Assange with 17 alleged violations of the Espionage Act carrying a sentence of up to 175 years in prison? Who, in the official political circles, either in the US or Britain, is ready to denounce the plan to railroad him to America to face a show trial? Who will declare the threat to his life as a threat to democracy? As for intimidation, who will speak for heroic whistleblower Chelsea Manning, who was in prison without charge for 6 months for refusing to testify against Julian Assange before a secret grand jury? None of these political scoundrels, that's a fact. Why? Because Assange and Manning exposed imperialist criminality, including war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq, of which the Republicans and Democrats are both guilty. In April, Johnson said it was only right that Assange now faces justice. Since then, we've all been provided with ample proof of Johnson's own respect for the law. We all know that here in the UK, contending right-wing factions of the ruling elite are tearing themselves apart over Brexit. But they're united in one thing: the understanding that state repression will be required to deal with the social and political opposition generated by the threatened collapse of the UK economy. Operation Yellowhammer revealed plans to deploy 50,000 troops, 10,000 riot police, and bring in emergency legislation to outlaw strikes. And no one is opposing this, including the Labour Party. That is why those who have exposed state crimes in the past must be made an example of and silenced forever. And that is why we must do all in our power to defeat this state conspiracy and free Assange and Manning. Now, Julian Assange has been a target of a state vendetta for almost a decade, including almost 8 years in arbitrary and illegal detention. The Socialist Equality Party in the UK, our co-thinkers internationally, and the World Socialist website have defended him from day one. Our work focuses on the mobilisation of the working class to demand an end to the persecution of Assange and Manning as prisoners of the class war, as the spearhead of the fight against imperialist war and the sharp turn towards authoritarian rule. Only this immense social force, the international working class, has the power to defeat the ruling class, its politicians, its judges, its media, its spies, and its police military apparatus. We will go forward in this fight.